Yeah, it's not bad, dude.
Too many hormones for Josh, though. Costco uses too many hormones.
I
I'd
don't
be
know, do they?
curious. I don't know. I'd be
Oh, I'm
curious to
sure
know where
they
they
do.
source their chickens from.
Well, they own their own chicken farm. We were just talking about that. So they use it as a loss leader. So I think they own their own chickens, own their own chicken farms, and that's how they put them out so cheap.
Yeah. I have to dig into it and look and see. But yeah, rotisserie chickens aren't expensive. I mean, Wegmans has them. You know, I mean, all the grocery stores have them. Yeah, and they're never like $6-7. You know, for a whole chicken. So it's not.
And I think it's almost cheaper than it is like buying it. Like if I go buy like a Purdue chicken or a Tyson's chicken or whatever, I think I'm paying like $7 or $8 for it uncooked.
Right?
Guarantee you are.
Dude, you're paying more than that. You're paying just for like, you know, skinless chicken breast. You're only getting 2 breasts. That right there is, you know, over $10.
But with the rotisserie, I guarantee you're paying more uncooked because they're charging by the pound, and there's still water and fat that's going to cook off of that while
Yeah,
you're.
that's true.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, 100%. No, you're spot on. Yeah, I'd be curious to know, you know, what they feed them, and know what they, you know, shoot the pH into them. You know,
And so
Why would they inject chickens with human growth hormone? That doesn't make any sense.
I was being sarcastic, ass. Good Lord.
You're being very generous saying that they actually feed the chickens. Dude, they probably just got IVs hooked up to them bad boys and they just pump them. Right?
Yeah, probably.
I would. And I will happily eat that chicken. And I would happily, if I had another young boy, I would make my son eat that chicken.
I've told you guys why they give the cattle so many antibiotics, right?
No.
I don't think so.
So cattle are designed to eat grass, right? They're not designed to eat grains. So they feed them a whole lot of grain at the feedlots. You know, when they come off the ranches and stuff, they've been eating grass for the most part, grass, alfalfa, stuff like that. But when they go to the feedlots, they start feeding them corn and all this stuff like this, mainly corn. They're not designed. Their bodies aren't designed to digest that. It will, but what happens is they start developing these lesions on their liver, like within a couple weeks, and so they have to pump them full of those antibiotics to keep those lesions from going septic. That's why they just, yeah.
Really?
It's crazy.
Did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Didn't know that.
They also pump them full of steroids. They have a little thing in there. Well, they used to. I don't know if they still do anymore. They have a little time release thing that they clamp on their ear, and it time releases hormones to get them to eat. It's crazy, man.
But why not just leave them as grass? Why not just leave them as grass fed? That way, when they hit the feedlot, they're done.
No, because there's simply not enough land to supply the beef demand. Right, for one cow or whatever steer, 1 acre is what they need. About 1 acre. They'll just mow through. I mean, they have to concentrate them down to meet the demand into a feedlot. So if you see grass-fed beef, and it's no joke, grass-fed, obviously it's going to be way more expensive because they probably never went to a feedlot. But
you know what?
Yeah,
dude, done. Let's start raising some of these neighborhoods to clear land for the cattle. Done with it.
Yeah, I agree. And we build desalination plants.
They'll never go back. I mean, farmers never go back to that anyway, because you got to get as much money for the cow as you can. So it benefits them to pump them up with steroids, and they get them as fat as they can. And I'll tell you, me personally, like I don't even like grass-fed food. Like if I eat it, it actually tastes too gamey for me. Like the burgers and stuff like that. Like I can actually tell, not everything, but like beef, I can tell. And it's like, it's very gamey.
Oh yeah.
I remember when I used to have a weak stomach too. Yeah, like
dude,
that.
You know, we're talking about harder to kill. So obviously for our listeners and viewers out there, I'm in Savannah and recording out of my trailer here. This is not one of Luke's holding pens. So I am here of my own free will. But dude, talking about harder to kill, like I can't get past the bugs. I've clearly been out in Arizona too long. Like these things are tearing me up, man. I was showing my wife, I've literally have like welts on my legs and my fingers.
Yeah. Dude, you can't go outside in the South until after December 1st.
This is brutal, man.
And come about March 1st, you got to go back inside.
I got bit, dude. I had to take a knee. Dude, I don't know what it is. It's like chiggers and everything. I'm just
It's
like, I have
dude,
fallen so
it's
far.
everything, man. It's mosquitoes, it's no-see-ums, it's all of it. The we're another note on the farming thing, man. We know farmers. We need to get a couple on to talk about this. Brandon out in
Jed, man, we
Kansas,
need to.
dude.
Yeah,
Brandon, because they have, like I said, he's family. They have, a massive farm, cattle, corn, soybean, combines, like whole 9 yards. Like that's what they do. And I know Luke. I know you got Jed and some others. Man, we need to get a couple of them on and actually and let them talk.
we don't
Because they
we don't
actually
want
know what
our
the hell they're
audience to
talking
hear
about.
from any experts, though.
Hey, audience, trust me, you're good. We receive all the information and we filter and pass through exactly what we want you to,
Right.
digest from the data.
We're
So,
actually
Josh,
actually thinking
go
about
ahead.
changing the name of the podcast to the Ministry of Truth.
Oh Lord,
So make sure you guys get those facts.
economy's
The
strong
facts
as
we
hell,
want you to
man.
have.
Economy's
That,
strong as hell.
hell yeah, Big Sisters. I love it. I love it. Where is that? Did you get that from the grocery store
New York
checkout
Post,
line?
man.
Oh, New York Post. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I had to go out and get one.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, man. They are
So,
watching
Josh,
you.
what's the secret with chiggers? What do you do for if you have a chigger, like down around your
Um,
ankle? You have like half a dozen chiggers.
some people will tell you that clear nail polish. You just kind of put
Hmm.
over it, and
Yeah.
that'll kill it.
Yep.
And then other times, man, you just man up a little bit and,
You
and
just
deal with it.
you
Scratch it
have to
out.
wait it out.
Yeah,
God.
you just gotta wait it out, man. It's torture for real. I mean, dude, chiggers, man, just stay away from. Don't sit down on wet wood. And you'll be able to avoid the chiggers mostly. But dude, the no-see-ums, especially Roger. If I remember that campground, there was a ton of oak trees in there with a
Oh
bunch
yeah,
of Spanish moss everywhere and
all over.
everything.
It's literally
Yeah,
hanging over the trailer.
yeah, bro. Like, so that moss is full of red bugs, and everything because we,
Good to know.
use it. We use it for decoration every now and then, and you'd have to throw it in the microwave for like 10, 15 seconds to kill
Jesus.
the red bugs and stuff in it.
Oh man.
But yeah, dude. I mean, you where that campground is gorgeous, but yeah, bro, it's
Well, it makes it worse because like we were listening to this audiobook and the way I hear my wife and I, and it's called like My Body or The Body or something like that anyway, but it's pretty medicalized or whatever. And they talk about we just got done with a chapter of like itching, and they're talking about how uh doctors don't really know why you itch, why you scratch things. I mean, there's certain things, obviously, if you get bit or whatever, you're trying to pull something out, you do that, but just general itching over your body. And they're like, you know, for me, it's become psychosomatic where they literally get to the part where like, hey, the most satisfying spot, and they don't know why, to get an itch and scratch is on your ankles. And of course, that's where like the chiggers or whatever in the hell I got on my
Yep.
ankles. And dude, I am digging into those things like there's no tomorrow.
But
I
that
can't
just
stop
makes it
myself.
that just makes it worse, right?
Yeah, but
The
it
more
feels good for like 3 seconds while I'm scratching it. I'm like,
that's
it
what
is
she
the
said.
greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, man, you just gotta man up and stop scratching them and just push
Isn't
through
it it's like a slight allergic reaction. It's your body saying this doesn't belong, do something about it, right? Like a
Yeah,
bug bite.
yeah.
Pretty much. It's the proteins attacking and irritating the skin. Speaking of which, so last weekend we had to make an emergency room visit. I didn't tell you guys about because
Oh snap!
yeah, my wife had a severe allergic reaction to something. And I mean, it got worse and worse and worse. I was like, yeah, I know it sucks. It'll go away. Take some Claritin, take this, take that. And she was breaking out all over with hives, like raised hives, and just itching. And then her breathing was becoming difficult. It started like Friday night. And by Sunday, it's like, okay, we got to go to the emergency room because breathing's getting tough. And we were trying to trace what it could have been. And we traced it back to she picked up some grocery store sushi and she's slightly allergic to like raw shrimp. Like if she handles raw shrimp, her fingers will swell. And so, yeah, we had to go. She got the epinephrine, she got the EpiPen.
wow.
They gave her an IV. And
Holy
man,
moly!
she had never had that before. And I think you guys probably have some experience with that. But dude, when you get that thing, your body feels like it's going to jump out of its own skin. I mean, it's it just supercharges the adrenaline and gets
Yeah.
every system in your body just cranking.
Holy
And
moly.
so she's laying there just like shaking. She's, what's going on? And
Yeah.
but anyway, we traced it back to that. It has to be that grocery store sushi. And the doctor was saying, for those of you with allergies out there, doctor was saying, hey, look, if if you're allergic to something, and she kind of explained it. I never understood the peanut allergy thing, how if somebody touches a peanut or gets a little bit of dust in their mouth, they can die. Well, that doesn't just happen overnight. If you're allergic to something, you don't get used to it. Every time you're exposed to it, it gets worse,
Right.
especially when you're talking about anaphylaxis. So it's like, yeah, you can grow out of certain allergies, but when you're talking like those complex proteins, like in shrimp or something like that, it'll end up killing you, and yeah, so it's got to be that. She's going to go get some allergy tests because we've got to know what that is. Because if we're not sure, we've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But
Is she doing okay now?
oh yeah. They put
Good.
her on some steroids for the week, and yeah, she's fine now. But knowing that there's something out there that can do that to you, the doctor's like, oh yeah, you ingested something,
Yeah.
and it's working its way through your body. So yeah, but it was a little bit of excitement. That's only the second time in her life she's been to an ER. So
You
yeah.
need to get her. You need to get her like one of those little Molly, tactical coyote tan EpiPen holders for her to, sling around, like wear on her arm or something like that.
Yeah. Well, they prescribed her 2 EpiPens, right? Plus the steroids and the Pepsid. Believe it or not, Pepsid is a anti-allergen that works inside your gut, right? And but I was like, oh my god, how much are these EpiPens going to be? I'd love to have a bunch of EpiPens around, carry it around on my first day, in the trunk of each car, because you just never know. I carry Narcan now, but they were cheap, man. They were cheap. They were like $6 for both of them. Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, I know. It's like
you got some good insurance.
Yeah, Blue Cross Blue Shield, baby.
I love it. Yeah, man. That's we had a guy when I was stationed in Puerto Rico. He was he had the additional duty of being the NBC NCO, and I don't know how old they were, but he found some atropine injectors in the NBC closet, and he thought they were training aids, right? So needless to say, they were not training aids, and a hospital visit later, he had taken, he rode the lightning because he injected himself with two live atropine injectors.
Two?
And that was 2. It was like, bro, yeah, so dude, it's that's got to be crazy though. Yeah. I've seen, I've seen people go into anaphylaxis shock before. It's not good. But I have seen people like, say you saying that if somebody's allergic to something, they don't ever get better. I've known people who are allergic to cats who, get exposed more, and eventually they aren't allergic to cats.
Yeah, the way she explained it has to do with the complexity of the protein involved. Like apparently for some reason, peanuts is a real complex protein that your body, whatever. And then shrimp, and she named off a few others, but like I grew out of certain, airborne allergens. I kind of grew out of it, but yeah, in cats, that saliva, I don't know, people are allergic to the saliva apparently. Cats are always cleaning themselves. Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking, I don't know why. I was thinking it was the dander.
Well, that's what they say, but from what I've read, again, we need to get a cat allergen expert on here. From what I've read, it's the saliva that they're licking, and then the hair goes everywhere, and that's what causes. I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
Roger, hey dude, is that your bougie coffee mug, the one that keeps itself warm?
No, this is just a plain old Jerome copper.
Oh, it's copper. The way the light hit it there for a second, I thought it was gold. I was like, I love it.
So speaking of drinking, so what's in your glass?
I have a little bit of New Riff single barrel rye.
So does that pair well with Sober October, or how does that work out?
Yeah, dude. So Sober October. All right. So Sober October, that went away probably a couple weeks ago.
Dude,
well, a week ago. So
I told
when Luke gave up on it, I was just like, all right, whatever. But I did make sure he gave up first.
I
No,
told
what was
Darren,
funny, what was funny was, you know, we were sitting here with our three-way chat, and Josh's like, man, I just need like 2 fingers. And it's like, man, go ahead and do it. He's like, no, I can't do it. I got to outlast Luke. I'm like, dude, Luke's been drinking beer for like a week and a half now.
after we recorded the last one, I told Darren, I was like, I got to tell you something. And I didn't get to tell him that Sober October is over. It was Sober October 1st through the 8th. And I was thinking about a George Carlin skit. I was on my way home from work or something one day. And Michelle's sister was visiting. And anyway, I'm on my way home and she's like, you've been so crabby. You know, we're talking on the phone. And I was thinking about a George Carlin skit. He's like, here, some things you never see. You know, a 7-foot Chinese guy with bright red hair and freckles. You never see that. You never see somebody running at full speed and taking a dump. And he said, and then there's some things you never hear, like, honey, you really ought to drink more. But I'm talking to my wife on the phone. She goes, just pick up a 6-pack on your way home. And I was like, I can't. It's Sober October. She's like, please pick up a 6-pack on your way home. And I'm texting you guys. And I'm like, the wife is telling me I have to, man. So yeah, it was about 8 days, 8 to 10 days, I think.
And then he was like, hey man, but I felt really good after that 8 days.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So, and Josh, it was good that you came off of it because of your recent trip, you know?
Yeah, that was, you know, when we were talking about it and you're like, hey, you know, do Sober October with me. I was like, yeah, fine. And I completely forgot that, you know, I was going to Kentucky, you know, specifically to go hit some of the Bourbon Trail. And I was like, man, what a poor life decision, right? Like that was just an incredibly poor life decision to do that. And it wouldn't have lasted, you know, past this week anyway. So yeah, for those out there, I went to Kentucky with my father-in-law and my wife's sister's husband. He's a pilot. He has his own plane, and you know, we don't get to spend a lot of time together. They live, you know, in a different state than we do, and we see each other for holidays and you know stuff like that. Other than that, you know, we're busy. They're busy. You know, and we don't get to see each other as much as we want to. So we decided, you know, let's you know, just the boys take a trip, you know, this year. And you know, the same, you know, my wife lost her mom earlier this year to cancer and everything. And so it was kind of a, you know, really for my father-in-law, it was a chance for him to get his two son-in-laws together and, you know, go bond and spend some time. And it was fantastic. But so we went to we you know, he flew down, picked us up. We, you know, flew to Kentucky, and I got to have, and I sent you guys, you know, the picture. I got to try Pappy Van Winkle, 20-year-old, you know, courtesy of my wife's sister's husband. And
Isn't that your brother-in-law, right? Wife's
well, my
sister's husband?
sister-in-law's husband. Would that be a brother-in-law? I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
brother-in-law,
I
right?
think so.
Something like that.
I think so. Okay, brother-in-law. That's easier than wife's sister's husband. So we got to, we went to, you guys may or may not be familiar with Justin's House of Bourbon in Lexington. All right, so part of it is a bourbon museum, and they have bourbon back there, like pre-prohibition bottles. It's absolutely, you know, the selection there is ridiculous. Now you can't afford any of those bottles, you know, because I mean they're charging, dude. I mean they're charging like $250 for a bottle of, you know, just regular Blanton's, which is
Yeah.
highway robbery, right? I mean it's just highway robbery. But they also have all their other non-allocated stuff and stuff you can't get here in North Carolina, you know, for at, you know, maybe just a little bit above MSRP, which is, you know, acceptable. But they have a bar, and at that bar they have all sorts of unicorns, all sorts of, you know, different. They have their store picks, all that stuff, and you know, my brother-in-law, he was like, man, I've always wanted to try Pappy to see what the hype is. And granted, I've never had Pappy 20-year. And he was like, all right, well, let's try the 20-year. I was like, yes, let's do this. And I tell you, it was good. It was very, very good. Like there was very little heat to it. It was just incredibly creamy and smooth. But folks, don't ever go pay $3,000 for a bottle of that. Like
or 2,000
don't do it, or 2,000, or I'd say
or
even
1,500
1,000.
or
Yeah,
1,000.
knowing what it tastes like now, if I was going to buy it to drink, right? I'm not, buying it to flip it aside. If I was buying it to drink, I wouldn't pay more than $150 for it. Like I wouldn't do it.
So it's
If I
all in the name then.
yeah, for me now, for me now, somebody else might try that, and it might be the best they've ever had, right? And so it's all up to, 'cause everybody's palates are different. But I'm here to tell you, I I wouldn't pay more than $150 for that bottle. Now, if I saw it for like 300-400, and I was like, oh yeah, I would buy it, but that means I'm going to flip it, at $3,000, because I would do that in a heartbeat. But alas, you're never going to see that bottle for
Well, I
150
mean,
or two hundred
and
dollars
that's
anyway.
it's like even high end bottles. If you you can find bottles out there if you want to go in the higher end for 70, 80, $90 that I probably couldn't tell you the difference between that and the $3,000 bottle, and may even say that this tastes better, right? I mean, it's
No,
yeah, you can splurge, and I tell you what, man, I didn't realize this as much in Phoenix because Phoenix generally is pretty high priced anyway, just as far as inflation, even before inflation, transitory inflation that we're still in before that happened. It's always been fairly high priced across the board, dude. Inflation sucks, man. Out here, it is crazy. I mean, just everything from meat and now, I'm starting to. I don't think I realized it so much until I went to the liquor stores out here, but it seems like I remember, and this could all be just rhetoric or anecdotal, whatever. But it seems like I remember higher end bottles going at that 59, $60 range, and if you wanted something really good, you were jumping up into the 99 or hundreds, like your special bottles, right? But I could find a lot of stuff in the, your lower shelf stuff at the $20 range, and you'd find some mid grade stuff at the 30. And your daily drinkers, you'd get, $30, $40, whatever. I'm not seeing any of that stuff now. I mean, everything is like $50 and above. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can go get your early times for $25, and I can get my old granddad for $14. But everything else is $50 and above. Dude, it's ridiculous. I mean, we walked into 3 or 4 liquor stores and just some run of the mill stuff. I'm like, everything is $55. I don't get it, man. Well, I guess I do get it. It's all inflation. I think, now I care because it's impacting me. It impacts something that, that I drink and eat it. But, I think we're kind of shielded from it a lot in Phoenix because, a lot of your food items are still fairly cheap out there. But talking to my daughter out here and then going to go shop, I was like, hey, we're still paying $1.80, $2 a gallon of milk out there. She's like, yeah, it's $3.65 out here. I go to the commissary. And dude, it is a shame. So it's hit so bad. It actually pisses me off. I'm going a little bit off the bourbon thing here, and I'll kick it back to you, Josh. But when you talk about inflation, and this is with everything, right? With rent prices or whatever. So I go to the commissary, and commissary, for those that don't know, it's the on-post grocery store. And generally speaking, at the commissary, they don't really carry generic brand items. It's all name brand, but it's significantly cheaper. They don't charge tax. They charge you a 5% surcharge, which is usually cheaper than the state tax anyway. But one, the meat was just horrible. Like I bought a new Blackstone grill. So I'm like, oh, we gotta buy some steaks, right? Gonna season this thing, some steaks on there. Meat was horrible. Couldn't buy any steaks. And then they were selling these big ass value packs of like just cheapo depot meat, just hunks of meat. Like they didn't even name it. It was just like lump of meat. And it's because of the inflation, right? Because a lot of your younger Joes out here just can't afford to eat off the economy anymore. And then we're here at the campground, and at first I was MFing this dude behind me because he was active duty. He's a captain. I'm like, see, these MFers, man, they stay on here full time and they ruin it for those retirees or even active duty soldiers or veterans that want to go camping. Because what ends up happening is they live here for the 2-3 years. Well, come to find out that him and another family behind them, now they both have kids that are being homeschooled. They can't afford to live off the economy, and there's no more housing here. So they are literally renting a trailer, staying at the campground, hoping that on-post housing is going to open up in 6 months.
Where's
Dude,
that? Is it Benning?
Savannah, Hunter Army Airfield.
See, okay. That's how many kids do they have?
I think like one family's got 2 kids, the other's got another 2, maybe 3.
Okay. Well, I guess go back to Josh, and I want to say something remind me to say something about the captain can't afford. Oh, Josh is saying to go ahead. Yeah, dude, I don't know. I mean, because I mean, officers make a lot of money. I mean, I saw my daughter's paycheck and I was like, mother of God. So it must, I mean, I was shocked. A lieutenant, she had me go into her account to transfer rent. I don't know if I covered this on the show or not. I've told so many people this story. She had, while she was at sapper school, I had to go into her account and transfer money for her rent, uh, because she has it taken out of another account. Something. And so I went in on whatever the first, September 1st or something like that. And I was shocked. I was like, mother, my God, that's one paycheck. It was, I'm not going to say how much it was for her privacy, but I was like, I'm going to have a talk with her, because if she's thinking about getting out, which I'd be all for that. You got to realize that when you go out on the economy, you're not going to be making that kind of money. You're just not. Uh, even if you get a really good job entry level in something, I mean, you got to figure in a lot of that money's not taxed, BAH, BAS, whatever they call it. Your insurance, nothing coming out for that. You have nice TSP, matching, all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, it's good. So I just wonder, um, I guess if you have a family and the wife's not working, I suppose that money doesn't go as far. I'm just
Well,
thinking about
and I
her as
don't
a
know what the
single
rest of their
24-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know what the rest of her situation is, right? Like, you've raised your daughter, right? Probably has very little debt, if any. So her paycheck she keeps. I mean, who knows, right? There's obviously a big backstory, or could be a big backstory there, where they own another home, or maybe there's some debt, or whatever the case is. But when I take that in hand with, the commissary prices, and selling lumps of meat packs, right? That's like, okay, well, it's obviously hitting a lot more folks, and we pay the rent for my daughter. I say we pay, the army pays the rent for my daughter out here at school. And we came out here looking for apartments, and it's not cheap, man. So it's me personally, I don't know if I could stay here in somebody else's camper for 6 months or whatever, but there's more than one family, so it's obviously having a greater impact. It's not just an isolated incident.
Yeah, and part of that may be too, like you said, there may be there is something that we're not aware of. I can tell you the housing market has definitely cooled off. We had a house in our neighborhood that were generally under contract within a week of going on the market. It sat for well over 45 days and had a price reduction before it went under contract. So maybe they had a house, they couldn't sell it. They're trying to pay, they're already paying a mortgage, who knows? But I mean, I saw, it here at home, milk is it's easily 330 something a gallon. And that's for skim milk.
Wow.
If you want the,
They
the
cut it with water.
fully leaded, yeah, if you want the fully leaded stuff, you're paying more.
Are you
Um,
seeing any price fluctuations? Because one thing I've noticed, has been buying a lot of it, is the price of eggs and chicken has really been fluctuating. It'll go up and down, up and down. Have you noticed that
yeah,
with anything out there?
yeah, yeah. Eggs are kind of up and down. They're all over the place. And I don't know if it has anything to do with those chicken farms that burn up. I think the chicken farms that burn up were mostly for meat chickens. They weren't necessarily for egg chickens. So who knows? And when we were in Kentucky the last couple of days, I saw it. There as well, man. I mean, granted, we stayed in a hotel. It didn't have a kitchenette or anything, so we kind of ate out as for meals and stuff. And it was, yeah, man, prices are up. I can tell you on the bourbon side, the prices are up a little bit. Like Roger was saying, you can still find your Jim Beam white label for for $20. But the bottles that used to be 30 $35 are now pushing 48 $49.
Yep.
In Kentucky where it's privatized. North Carolina is I'm sorry, Kentucky where it's not privatized. Um, yeah, it's privatized. My bad. North Carolina is not privatized, state controlled, and so the price, but even some of those prices, they put out their new pricing schedule for 2023, and some things have gone up. And that's due, I mean, distillers, trying to get the glass. There was a glass shortage. During 2020, we saw this. Smoke Wagon went through that with their clear bottles because they couldn't get the color bottles anymore at least for a little while. But I mean, it was a good time. I tell you what, and I'll say this: Kentucky during the fall, the leaves are changing, everything absolutely gorgeous. We
It's
drove through,
beautiful.
man. So we drove, we drove in between Louisville and Lexington, and then we went down south of Louisville. We did a tasting and a tour at Jim Beam. So that was one of the only ones we could get into, and then we took the back roads back to Lexington through horse country, and I mean, it was postcard gorgeous. Like it was just with the horse farms and horses out there in the pastures and stuff like that. It was absolutely gorgeous. We went to a horse race at Keeneland. It was part of the Breeders' Cup Series. Had never been to a horse race before, so it was kind of cool. I was probably the worst dressed person there, and probably the poorest person there. All these people in there, the ladies had on dresses and big hats and fur coats because it was super cold. It was probably like 30 something degrees, with the wind. And
Hmm.
guys are all in their their salmon colored pants and blazers and stuff like that. I show up in basically a sweatshirt and jeans and like, what's up, everybody?
I still,
It's
I still say one of the most beautiful drives I've ever made, and I've made some beautiful ones. Pacific Coast Highway, Colorado, New Mexico. I haven't really done the Northeast, extreme Northeast, but going through Tennessee in October was unbelievable. I mean,
oh
I
wow.
was on my way to Fort Bragg, and I'm glad I got to see something beautiful before I turned slightly south and headed down to North Carolina.
Yeah.
Because it was just like this. I didn't even know what was going on making that drive. I'm like, why am I feeling like a dark cloud come over me? There's no reason for this as I turned
Yeah.
south to go down to Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
But they knew what was coming. The powers knew and gave me an inkling of that. So when you were eating out this past week, get y'all's thoughts on this, because I think we've talked about this numerous times. I was in Dallas this past week at a very interesting course. And maybe someday we'll talk about this kind of stuff. Might bore the audience to death, but I didn't have a kitchenette either. And one thing I've forgotten from our days when we were working back on the East Coast was that you can request them to send a microwave up to your room. I had forgotten about that, and a pilot was behind me in line, and whatever he came, airline pilot, and he said, "Can I get a microwave sent up?" I was like, "Dang it, man! I forgot that you can do that if they have enough." So anyway, I had to eat out, right? And at the end of the day, it's one of these courses very taxing on your mind, and you're just tired. And what choice do you have? You have fast food, and that's kind of it. And you got your different levels of fast food. But I think, and I want to get y'all's advice on this, and those of you listening and stuff, man, shoot us some comments. Other than just like getting those ready meals, you can get those delivered to a hotel, weeks worth of food, and you can get some healthy options there, sensible options, I should say. But one night, I was so tired. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to drive around until I see something that looks good. And I saw Firehouse Subs, right? It's like, Firehouse, that's pretty good. It's all the bread and everything, but okay, I'll go ahead and get a Firehouse Subs. Dude, I went back to the hotel and ate that thing, and I was like, go. I could barely finish the sandwich. And I realized what it was. It was like eating an ice cream sundae. It was so sweet. Like the sauces they put on there, the bread, that stuff is loaded with sugar. So I looked it up, and like Subway, Firehouse, all these places, their bread kind of doesn't even qualify as bread. It's got too much sugar in it. It's not even real bread. It's so here's where I'll ask Roger. I get your Popeyes, I get that, but I mean, I guess with Popeyes do the same thing as Chick-fil-A, where you can just order the filet without the bun or anything else. So I was like, okay, Chick-fil-A, get a nice big Cobb salad from there, plus an extra breast. I'm thinking Chipotle is pretty good, as far as not making you feel like garbage. But like, what are the other options, other than going into a sit down restaurant? I mean, like fast food or other options where you don't have a kitchenette to eat sensibly when you're on the road.
There aren't, and that's part of the problem. Yeah, it's what I found myself doing more and more, depending on where I'm at, is going to like a Whole Foods or something like that, where they have like the buffet bars. So at least I can go in there and kind of pick what I want. I have been doing a lot more like Mexican food and doing exactly what you're saying. I'll order like the carne asada burrito or like a chicken burrito or whatever, and then just open up the tortilla and just kind of pick the the meat out of it or whatever, just to kind of limit my carbs. But that's part of the problem. And when you look at it, goes back to not just inflation, but just overall pricing. It is cheaper to eat dirty than it is to eat healthy. Like you sit there, I mean, even us now with what we do, and my wife, both and I work, both of us working, and the kids gone, and this and that, so we have a lot less expenses. But like for us to eat like healthy, our grocery bill would be 3 times what it is. I mean, it's literally cheaper to go to McDonald's, even eating out, right? It's cheaper to go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something like that than it is to go find any other healthy options. The only even quasi healthy option you see are like maybe sushi restaurants or something like that. Maybe, then you're stuck like your wife, like getting grocery store sushi or 7-Eleven sushi and, trying to get some fruit. I mean, I guess you can do that, but there aren't any. And especially being on the road. I mean, now, fortunately with the travel trailer, I'm able to pack stuff in the fridge and kind of cook on my own and do that type of stuff so I can prep. But if I'm traveling without this, just on my own, it's tough, man. I mean, unless you make a concerted effort, maybe that's part of the problem, right? You just have to make a concerted effort to, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to buy a bag of apples. I'm going to buy a bunch of bananas. I'm going to pick up some, and but even that's if you have access to a fridge in your hotel, which a lot of them give you the crappy, the blue button that you got to push every 90 minutes to keep the fridge on, type thing.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it's like, well, hey, if you have a microwave, like you said, that you can throw it in there. I mean, there's just so much. It's just easier, right?
Yeah. So what was it, last year? Yeah, it was 2020 when I was when I was TDY to Tampa for like 6 weeks. I mean, that was a big thing. That was like, hey man, like I was trying to get to hit the gym there on McDill every day, and because I was like, I can't eat out for 6 straight weeks, right? I mean, I would be fatter, much fatter, than I already am. And luckily, luckily my hotel had a fridge, and then I had a microwave and a toaster, right? I was like, okay, like I can work with this. And so what I would do is, maybe like twice a week, I would go to the grocery store. I'd go hit Publix, and you can get those like those taco kits, not the box ones, but the ones that actually come with the meat already cooked. They got chicken in there, and they got some like 4 or 5 tortillas, and a sauce and stuff like that. Like I would get that, and that would be I would divide that up over lunch and dinner. I could eat that for 2 days, for lunch and dinner. And so, basically you're having, a little soft taco with some chicken. I'd, cut the cheese out. And, so that, and then, I did for breakfast, it was a lot of oatmeal, those are little bowls where you just add the hot water, and wound up and had to switch hotels just for a very short time, and it didn't have anything. It didn't have a microwave. It didn't have anything like that. And so I'm probably going to get I'm probably going to get something 20 years from now. But I was just from my hot water, like I just had to run the sink water until it got hot, for my oatmeal, and put some sink water in there. Which again, I don't know how Tampa tap water is, but generally it's not my favorite. I try and stay away from tap water. At least use the filtered water on the fridge, come out of the fridge door, rather use that than tap water. But it is very difficult to eat healthy, while you're traveling, while you're on the road. It's not easy at all. I go to the grocery store. My thing is I go to the grocery store and I try and find, okay, what can I eat healthy? I don't have a fridge. What are those things that I can eat that don't necessarily have to have that fridge for. And then even again the microwave, you can run that water until it's hot enough to get your oatmeal ready, or whatever you're eating. It's hard though. It's not easy. And you're absolutely, you guys are absolutely spot on. It is. People will go broke. There's a reason why all of us call whole food whole paycheck, right? It is you can't eat healthy. It costs, I can go buy a hamburger from McDonald's for less than I can get their garden salad. And that's crazy. And it should
Yeah.
not be that way.
Well, the game changer we were talking beforehand. I generally don't eat meat off the bone. I find it uncivilized. So I just walk right by
This
the.
MFer.
I
What?
right by.
Are you serious?
Generally, I don't know, but
So
I'll eat
you can
ribs.
no longer, you cannot give me crap anymore about anything that I ever own, eat, how I do my coffee, nothing.
I'll eat.
Doesn't he say you're bougie and I'm almost as bougie as you?
Yeah, yeah. That's my bougie thing. It used to be at least, but we live in different times now, guys. I'm gonna have to.
That
But
rotisserie chicken, good.
so yeah, that rotisserie chicken. I generally just walk right by that. In the store, they have the pre-cooked. It's in the little thing, and I walk right by it. My wife picked one up last night, and I come home. I was like, man, that looks good. She's peeling, just getting that meat off of there, off that
Yeah.
breast, and it's like, man, that looks good. I was like, how much was that? And I was thinking she was going to say $14. I don't know. She goes, that was like $7. I'm like, $7? It's like, that is a game changer. That's lunch every day for a while at least, till I get sick of it. But that's one of those things where if you just went and got the rotisserie chicken, you're just gonna have a simple lunch. You're gonna eat that whole thing because you're hungry. That's $7, man. A meal from Wendy's is probably about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's right there is comparable. It's like you got to find these little life hacks, in these times. It's like, okay, Luke, you're gonna have to eat meat off the bone now, bro. I mean, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to go caveman with it, and I may end up liking it. I just don't like the wings.
Lord.
You know what? The wings is what turned me off. Like from Buffalo Wild Wings. Like, it's
He
so
is the
much
reason they
effort.
invented boneless wings.
But
That's
those are
right
just
there
chicken
is
nuggets.
why.
Those are just
those are
chicken
not
nuggets.
exactly. Those are not boneless wings. Those are nuggets, and
Yeah,
chicken nuggets are what children eat.
yeah. I know. Did you
Oh
see
my
that
God.
McDonald's
Oh,
is
Lord.
McDonald's is bringing out a Happy Meal for adults? Did you see that?
Are you
They're
serious?
rolling out the Happy Meal for adults.
Yeah,
So
because people
yeah,
can't afford to eat anywhere.
that's
Oh,
Just give you a
that's
that's
where we're
smaller
right.
at.
Yeah, I
burger.
did see it.
So check
It's
this out. I want to go on a different tangent here because I saw this headline and it made me upset for multiple reasons. Here's the headline: Russian fighter jet crashes into Siberian home as Ukraine shells Belgorod region. So where that in Siberia, okay, around Irkutsk, and the deepest lake in the world is Lake Baikal. Okay, it's not politics. It's just chill. So it's near Lake Baikal. Belgorod region is right across the border from Ukraine, southern Ukraine. That's about 2,800 miles away. Those two things are 2,800 miles away. Those two things are not even related. The Russian fighter jet crashing into a Siberian town and Ukraine shelling this area of Russia. Okay. But the average person reads that headline and thinks that those two things are inextricably linked. And they're basically, oh my God, a Russian fighter jet crashed into a home in Siberia. It has everything to do with the Ukraine war. I guess my point is people read that. Nobody would have cared 3 years ago that a Russian fighter jet crashed near Lake Baikal in freaking Siberia. But now everyone cares about it. And the average person reads that and thinks that that Russian fighter jet crashed just right across the border from Ukraine. And the reason this pisses me off is because people do not understand geography, much less geopolitics, yet everyone's on board with this thing. I'm just, oh, and these same baby boomers that were protesting the Vietnam War, why are we there, all this stuff, in a second, these people would send troops into Ukraine if they had a choice, U.S. troops into a meat grinder in Ukraine. They would do it at the drop of a hat. And my question is, it's probably a pretty easy question to answer, Roger, my question is why? Why the change? Can you not see the bald-faced hypocrisy of your thought process? The same people that protest in the war in Iraq, nobody really ever protests the war in Afghanistan, but Iraq definitely they did. But now they're all in. Putin bad guy. Saddam should have stayed. We should have left Saddam alone, but Putin a bad guy. What's up with this, man?
Part of it is just the political landscape. I mean, here's the reality of it. The last 20 plus months, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, unless you're just completely blind, and even then you can still see it, has just been horrendous for the administration and the cabinet. And part of their narrative beyond the last 20 months has been Putin bad, Putin bad, Putin bad, which of course he is. Got it. And that way you can link anybody to him. You say his name. You've heard about the Steele dossier, this and that. Anybody linked with Russia, just bad, bad, bad. So there's a couple of things. One, it continues to make Putin the bad guy. It continues to make Russia the bad guy. It continues to make it so that anybody we link, anybody they link, and it's not even linking, anybody they just say. Yeah, it's exact. You are being generous with the fact that maybe the journalists actually knew where Siberia was and that it wasn't close to the front lines. Because you know what? There's probably a 50-50 chance that he or she didn't know that. It's like, fighter jet goes down. Yeah, it was right on the board. No, maybe you pull out a world map. But over the last 20 some odd months, one, you had bipartisan support. And so it's a way that the administration can claim some type of victory. But I mean, dude, what else is there? What else is there for them to focus on? I mean, you have to come up with something to detract and distract the American public from everything that's going on, because I don't care who you are. You can't argue with the fact that, hey, we've kind of gone downhill a lot over the last 20 months. And so you have to take, that's why the abortion thing, right? It makes me wonder when SCOTUS came out with that decision initially, I was like, wow, they're kind of firing up the base, and especially the Democratic base. And you saw a boost in the polls, which shocked me. But now you're starting to see it die down. It's like, hey, maybe there was some play there with, hey, we release this early, everybody will get fired up, and then you give a couple months, and now abortion is like number 6 or 7 on the list as far as priorities. But it's just, you look at the political landscape. I mean, they have to keep it in the news because there's nothing else to go off of. And it was the only thing they had bipartisan support. And now you have McCarthy, they were talking about, and everybody's on his back now, right, wrong, or indifferent, because he's asking for oversight and accountability, which I think is the first step, because and it goes beyond that. It goes beyond oversight and accountability. It also goes on to, are there better things for us to spend the money on? Right. I'm a firm believer, and I get it. We don't operate in a vacuum, but we have a lot of domestic challenges right now. And we've talked about this. It's funny because inflation's been going on so long. I remember us having this conversation before when they talk about quantitative easing and just printing money in the budget. And you want a strong economy and you want a strong bank account to weather bad days. The problem is we got to the point where we've been negative in the bank account for so long under presidencies from both parties that you're no longer able to weather that stuff. And it goes back to my whole thing that I read a couple years ago, where a lot of the Democrats, they just believe, hey, man, you just keep printing money. I mean, they honestly believe that there's no repercussions. Hey, man, we just print money. We just continue to print it. And, I saw a meme the other day, and I'll kick it over to Josh for his thoughts on it. But it made a valid point. They were kind of it was tongue in cheek, but it's like, well, hell, if you can just print money and it doesn't matter, then why are we paying taxes? Why don't you just keep printing money, right? I mean, they seem to contradict.
Yeah. So I think that's to go back and answer Luke's question. So I think that's one piece of it, right? If they're talking about Ukraine, they're not talking about record 40-year inflation. They're not talking about the left trying to sexualize children. They're not talking about the left pushing drag shows, for little kids and everything. But there's another parallel with that, right? It's another parallel vein to it when you know you go back and you look at not only the Ukraine piece, but you look at when Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan. I mean, what is one of the triggers for Xi Jinping and China? It's us intervening, in Taiwan. That is an absolute friction point. Not one member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said a peep about that. Not one of them said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't do this. This is not going to lead us down a good road with China. What have you." I think but with the Ukraine thing and with the China thing, I think the Ukraine piece is a lot larger than Well, if we're talking about that, we're not talking about inflation. You know, in 2016, it was Trump as an agent of Russia, right? He is, he's on the books, he's recruited, a whole 9 yards. Well, if they continue to, and the left jumped on that, they grabbed onto that, and they still have not let go, even after the Mueller investigation, said no, there's no evidence of that, after hearing after hearing after hearing, it's like, yeah, there's no real evidence of any of that. they can't let that go. They have to continue that, anti-Putin narrative, because that supports their anti-Trump narrative, and their Republican narrative, right? Because now everybody they don't like is an agent of Russia. You know, Elon Musk was like, "Hey, why don't we try and get Ukraine and Russia to the table?" And now he's an agent of Russia, right? And it was like, okay, everybody I don't like, is a Russian operative. Um, so go. What's up?
Yeah, and they're demonizing Elon because he provided Starlink, right, to Ukrainian citizens and soldiers, and then he simply turned around to the Pentagon and said, "Hey, can you guys start picking up the tab on this because it cost me $20 million a month?" And the left
Yeah,
is all, "You should just do this out of the goodness of your heart."
right.
Well, I
Well,
thought his troll to the I can't remember which Ukrainian ambassador it was. It was Ukrainian ambassador. Might have even been to Washington. But when he put in, it was after he gave him the Starlink. Um, he made his like 4-point recommendation to the world. He tweeted it, and it kind of made a lot of sense. Didn't agree with all of it, but it made a lot of sense. And that ambassador, that Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S., basically told him to F off. I should find the tweet. With all due respect to Elon Musk, F off is what she said. And that's when he started asking the Pentagon, he's like, hey, you need to foot the bill for some of this because we can't do this, indefinitely.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
somebody made some comment to that, some tweet, and Elon Musk forwarded the tweet from the Ukrainian ambassador with the emoji with the hands up shrugging emoji, said, I'm just doing what they asked me to do,
yeah,
by requesting money for Starlink. It's like, bro, and this is what's I'm sorry, I'll kick it right back to you, Josh. This is what's really bothering me about Ukraine is they are acting so entitled to our support and money. It's like you're gonna sit back and bite the hand that feeds you. Oh, Luke's saying that he must be pro Putin, the pro Putin wing of the GOP, according to Liz Cheney. It's like, no, man, no, you cannot demand these things, and there's got to be some kind of end state to this. But Zelensky and nobody I'm seeing on the Ukrainian side is coming up with any end state. There's no end state. It's pissing me off, man. Ukraine is pissing me off, and I'm tired of Zelensky, and I'm tired of people talking about it. I'm tired of my money going there too.
yeah. I'm tired of talking about it too, but you were the one that brought it up. So you know, and Ukraine asked Elon for Starlink. They tweeted out and asked Elon to provide them Starlink. So he gave them Starlink. And then, he turns around and, he's like, hey, you guys mind chipping in, to the Pentagon and, here's some ideas to broker a peace deal. Right. And, instead of saying, hey, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we need to get to the table. We need to talk. It was automatically, well, he's an agent of Russia. Right. So I think that, the other, vein on this too is, and, Eisenhower warned us about this. War is good. War is good for the United States government and the military industrial complex. It is very good. Iraq is, pretty much wound down. Afghanistan is gone. Raytheon and, Lockheed and everybody, they got to make money. They still have to make money somehow, and we're not dropping JDAMs and such in Afghanistan anymore, and we're really not dropping them a whole lot in Iraq anymore and northern Syria. They got to make some money somehow. So what better way? Well, we'll just sell this stuff to the Ukrainians. And I've asked a number of times from our Twitter account, is what is, and I still don't know because I've not seen a plan. What is the United States goals or plan in the Ukraine-Russia conflict? We're giving them a whole bunch of money. We're giving them a whole bunch of weapons. What is what is the end state? What is our goal? What end are we working towards as a country? Are we trying to, because the way it looks right now, it doesn't appear to be either side is going to win, right? It looks like it's going to be a stalemate. Russia came out today, just a little while ago, maybe 2 hours ago, and said that they have found out, quote, and again, they're saying that Ukraine is going to detonate a dirty bomb, in Ukraine, right? And it's like, Oh boy, right? And
Here
we
we
all know
go.
Russia. Yeah, we all know Russia. Has they're going to do it and be like, oh, the Ukrainians did this, or and so, but
So
we don't
let
have clear goals in this, and this is how we got sucked into Vietnam, right? And the left, the left, they're going to they are going to cheer us straight into another protracted war in Ukraine against Russia and Belarus and whoever decides to to jump in and get their jihad on, um, all the while not understanding. Okay, why are we there? What are we trying to do? What's the what are the end goal to this? Man,
well let's flip the script on those folks who think it's a good thing to go and help Ukraine, send U.S. troops in there, get in a protracted conflict. I mean, reviewing our past performance for the last 20 years, I guess if we got involved, that would be a really good way for Russia to win, right? I mean, we haven't had a really good track record of, you know, solid wins here. But so I'm no financial expert, but I watched this show on Netflix that had Jason Bateman in it. It got me to thinking, uh, what's it called, Roger, when you give somebody a bunch of money? You give them $10,000 as a gift to help them pay their rent and stuff or whatever they need money for. And then you're like, hey, that $10,000 I gave you last week, I'm going to give you these 100 widgets and I'm only going to charge you $9,000 for them. I know you need the widgets in your house. So you're like, well, I've got $10,000. I already deposited into my account. Okay, I'll write you a check or I'll wire $9,000 in your account. You give me the widgets. What is that called? It's
That's a,
something to do
that's a
with
pretty good money
cleaning
laundering.
clothes,
Yeah.
laundering. That's what it is. Because, dude, that's what's happening. We're giving them $40 billion at a time, and then, hey, we're gonna sell you these javelins at a discounted price. How much you got? Oh, well, he gave us 40 billion last week. We put it into this account over here. We're gonna pay the Defense Department we're gonna pay him 30 billion for the javelins. I mean, this is straight up. I mean, it's money laundering. That's what it is. We're giving them aid. They're buying weapons from us, Germany, France, whoever else. Dude, this is straight up money laundering. Am I wrong?
No, and Josh, he typed out another great point. It's, hey, Zelensky knows where the bodies are buried with this admin. I mean, it's starting to go farther and farther down. You start to talk about Hunter Biden, and I tell you, it pisses me off because when you hear about Garland and Biden and talk about the FBI and the other agencies, oh, we should have complete trust, and they get all angry and this and that. I'm like, dude, if you are following any of these hearings and you're following any of these trials, it's no wonder that a lot of people have lost faith in the administration and branches of government. I will say this with Ukraine, and I'm not saying they don't have a right to defend themselves. I mean, they it's their land, man. I mean, it's their territory, and Russia is taking it. And for Ukrainians, you need to defend it. And I'm not saying that we don't necessarily provide assistance. What does worry me, and I think you brought this up before, Luke, is it's accidents. How close are you to starting a third world war because of oops? I think one of our listeners sent out an article the other day or tweeted it out where what was the 82nd or the 101st was carrying on
the
military
100 worst.
exercises, yeah, down to close to the border and stuff like that. Just makes me wonder. It's like, hey man, all it takes is a whoops, my bad, right? And then you're on the verge of World War III, if you're already not down that path anyway. But I think it makes me wonder. Well, one, I think Josh is spot on. I mean, there's obviously a lot of dealings with the Biden family in Ukraine, a lot of dirty laundry there. So I don't see this going anywhere over. Heck, dude. I mean, you called it earlier, Luke, with protracted war. I mean, this probably goes on for what, another year at least, right?
Here, yeah, yeah. Here's my. This is the other part that that frustrates me about this as well. And again, it goes back and it really to me. And if anybody out there listening disagrees, I would absolutely love to hear it. Um, but it just it buttresses my belief that a lot of this is about Trump, because not one person not one person in the Obama administration gave a shit when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and annexed
Yep.
the Donbas and Crimea. No one.
Yep.
They sent them, the Obama administration sent them a strongly worded letter. That was it. That was literally the extent of it. And now, all of a sudden, people, they want to clutch their pearls, that Russia pushed further in, they attempted to push further into Ukraine. And it's like half of you couldn't even find Ukraine on a map in 2014. And now all of a sudden it's you're willing to go to war, willing to start a world war over a country, one, you've never been to. You couldn't find it on a map. And oh, by the way, you're not going to be the one that has to fight it. Right? You're not going to be the one that has to fight it. It's going to be Luke's daughter that has to go fight it. Right? It's going to be, us when, they decide that, because the Army 25% of it is, short of its recruiting goals because, Roger's not out there recruiting, meth addicts and kids with Down syndrome.
Hey, meth wasn't a big deal when I was recruiting.
Right? We're going to get recalled and we're going to, we're going to go. But all these people that are, clamoring and banging the war drums, they're not going to be the ones that have to go do it. So it's easy for them, we said it, last episode before, I can't remember. We said it a couple times. There are no good guys in this fight. There are none. Ukraine has every right in the world to defend their, their country and their territory, but it doesn't automatically make them the good guys just because they're fighting Russia. If Russia and China went to war, who would the left cheer for? They would twist themselves into knots, and they would ultimately, who the left would support? The left would support China. They would go to bat for China.
Who else is helping though? Who else is helping? Like we're sending all this money and aid, and supposedly, because 2 months ago you heard how strong Biden made NATO, and it's the strongest it's ever been, and this and that. So, like, who else is helping Ukraine?
Well, Germany and Poland, for sure. Material support, financial support. I do know that. I've seen articles on that, but I'm sure these other countries are getting in on the gravy train, man. Like I said, it's money laundering. Ukraine is getting a ton of cash, and I promise you, there are defense contractors from all these countries in NATO just having a field day in Kyiv.
Britain, so Britain's in on it. They're providing support like that. I don't know how much they are right now, considering they're holding job interviews, for PM.
I heard they might bring Boris Johnson back, the guy they just got rid of.
Here's the thing, though. You know what though? Here's what's sad. And there were some people, that again, some of my friends and even some of my family were, they were like, oh well, that was a lot of problems. She had a lot of problems, to start with, and blah blah. I was like, yeah, she was an anti-establishment person. She was going to come in and basically, she was going to, not allow business as usual. From as much as Britons can be neocons, and so they ousted her for it, right? And 44 days, I think she was in 44 days before.
Dude, she tried to cut taxes, and they like freaked the hell out.
They absolutely lost their mind and why is that? Because their economy, their healthcare, all of those, social safety net are all built around the taxes. And they knew that, hey, man, she is going to take away our gravy train, and we might actually have to go out and support ourselves. We might actually have to go do something for ourselves and work 5 days a week. And and they threw her ass out of office for it. It was like literally like, I'm going to put money in your pocket. And they ran her out of there with torches and pitchforks. And it was like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? That's one of many reasons why, Britain went from, ruling basically 3/4 of the world to, ruling an area the size of the state of Michigan. Was that silly ass mentality that, is going to run it. Somebody actually recommended, and there were members of parliament that, supported this, to put Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, have him as prime minister. And it was like, are you truly insane? It's just,
Speaking of
You know what?
truly insane.
They're going to get what they deserve. And I'll
Speaking
feel
of
sorry
truly
for 'em.
insane, there were protests across Germany yesterday about energy prices. Uh, not huge, but about 24,000 total, spread across 8 or 10 cities. So it's starting to get a little cooler over there. But I was reading about these protests, and these freaking morons are protesting inflation and energy. Like energy costs are going up, and it's not, any kind of relief that's coming is not targeting the neediest, so on and so forth. I'm looking at these signs that these people are holding. It's written in German. These morons are protesting energy prices and saying we need more solidarity and less fossil fuels. Infinite crisis, one cause, capitalism. It's like I am so glad I'm not living in Europe anymore, because these people, they think that they're so smart, they think that they're so enlightened, and Americans are so dumb and they don't understand the real world. It's like, no, you people are sheltered. If any, I mean, I would go so far as to say a lot of Europeans are more sheltered than Americans and living in less of a real world than Americans. These people, the social safety net that exists in the UK that Josh was talking about, is so broad and vast that people, they don't care to think where that money comes from. They're worse than Americans on that. I'm telling you, they are. And people who ask those questions, like, well, hey, maybe we should think about how much money we're spending on these, social welfare programs. Oh, no. Ultra conservative, nationalist, far right wing, one half step away from straight Nazi. It's like, ugh. But all this stuff, we're glad y'all are listening. And if this is your first time to listen, you should go back and listen to the past 100 episodes. We predicted all of this stuff, man, months in advance. The COVID thing, episode 5, we're saying, man, y'all get ready. The inflation's coming. It may not happen next year or the year after, but it's coming. And here we are. Same thing with the Germany, the energy crisis. Bro, it's going to get bad over there this
So
winter.
are they no longer laughing at Trump back in 2016 when he said, "Hey, you need to get off of"? Are they
Of
still
the
laughing
Russian.
about that? Or
I
Get off of the
guarantee
Russian
you
gas heat.
they're twisting themselves. They're twisting themselves into mental knots trying to do this gymnastics. So that if you went and asked somebody, it's like, yeah, Trump, he didn't know what he was talking about. Oh, you're not laughing now, are you? No, they would come up with some crazy ass. Oh, this isn't that. The problem with this is capitalism. The problem with this is we need to get off fossil fuels. We wouldn't even be in this predicament if it wasn't for our reliance on Russia's fossil fuels. Like, okay. So how about nuclear? Y'all like that in Germany? Oh, no.
Oh,
Nuclear is off the table. Absolutely
oh,
off the table.
did you see who's not in the news anymore when it comes to the climate change stuff? When it comes to climate talk stuff like
Greta?
that? Yep. You know why? When
No.
she came out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and was like, "Yeah, Germany needs to fire up the nuclear reactors to bridge the gap between Russian gas and figuring something else out." Dude, they threw her ass out on the side of the road in a heartbeat. They were like, okay. Now they're talking about like, well, she's not old enough to understand, blah blah. I was like, you had her at the UN. She was given talks at the United Nations to world leaders, and now all of a sudden, well, she really just doesn't understand, because she came out and in some moment of clarity, she had a bad bowl of borscht, the night before or something, and she was like, maybe Germany needs to restart their nuclear plants to bridge the gap between, until they figure something else out. And they were like, everybody behind the scenes, they're like, get her out from in front of the microphone right now. It's the
First
same talk that dude.
first
Yeah.
semi-sensible thing she says, and they're gonna
Yes.
toss her like a bad
Yeah.
habit.
It was like, dude, it was like her handlers were like Joe Biden's handlers. They were like, get her away from the microphone right now. Oh my God, somebody go get her before she said something even more stupid. Right. It was, and so, but you're gonna see it. You've already seen, the warnings, come out from the governments in Europe saying, hey, expect to be chilly this winter. Spain has moved to a temperature for your homes. They've already regulated, hey, by the way, at whatever, it is Celsius. And basically, and I get that they're kind of like me. It's like, hold on, are you cold? Yeah, well, you have on a t-shirt and shorts. You better go put on a hoodie before you touch that thermostat, right? Try not to, let too many people touch the thermostat in the house. But you're going to see what you're going to see is you're going to go back and see, and I'm going to throw it over to you, Luke, right now as soon as I say this. What you're going to see, you're going to go back and you're going to see rations at the fuel pumps, and I think you're going to see those rations very soon.
Yeah, you said thermostats, and I remember seeing an article. I think it might have been out of LA. It was out of somewhere. I want to say it was California, where the
Colorado.
Colorado, where first of all, it was a
People opted
recommendation.
in.
Yeah, they opted in so that you got your smart Internet of Things thermostat. And Roger, sounds like you know more about this than me, but basically they sent out a thing saying, "Hey, we want to adjust your thermostat remotely to keep it at what we think it should be." And their credit, you could opt in or you could opt out of it, but a lot of people opted into that. It didn't realize it, and Josh just texted the article. Thanks for that. And you've got the government now adjusting your thermostat for you, and it's like, I don't like
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah, well, it was one of those from what I saw. It was one of those. It was like the Amazon thing. You didn't get to opt into it. You had to dig to opt out of it. You were automatically enrolled in it, and you had to go find the fine print to intentionally opt out instead of intentionally opting in. And that's to me that's BS. That massive BS.
Oh man, that's so. Yeah, that
Now,
was a little bit
Luke,
scary.
one of your homes, don't you have like a lockbox on the thermostat?
It's definitely. But that's my house.
So do the residents there get a chance to opt in or out of that lockbox, or how do you just put it on there and they have to opt out of it, right? Or they don't even have an option to opt out.
They could opt out with a popsicle stick. And I know when they do that.
So I bet you're in
stick
deals
a popsicle stick up in there, and it's old school. You remember those adjusters on the bottom, and you see the red thing and the black thing.
Yeah,
it's on the bottom. All they have to do is get in there, and I know when they do it, because the energy bill spikes.
Luke put a cardboard box of field jacket liners and poncho liners by the door and was like, "You better use this before you touch that damn thermostat."
I bet him and Warnock are on business deals together. Huh? You guys in the same slums, or?
Oh, yeah, I could never run for office. This slum. So, Roger, do you want to tell the audience about the great idea for the water shortage in California or anywhere else?
No, go ahead. No, because I was actually going to ask you about it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So there's supposed rising sea levels. It's a big problem, right, Josh? These rising sea levels. So, driving around, I tend to come up with solutions to the world's problems. And on a side note, I was like, wouldn't it be a great idea to put a billboard between Fort Stockton and El Paso, which is so desolate. There's so many truckers, and I know they're listening to podcasts. We could put a billboard up there, or a few billboards that said, "All caught up on the Joe Rogan experience? Check out Culper's Canteen Cup on iTunes." Man, dude, we probably get a few listens from that. Right?
I like it.
But the other idea, I was like, okay, you got these rising sea levels everybody's talking about, and there are two technologies that we're still kind of figuring out, right? One technology is nuclear. It's not perfect, not yet. The Gen 4 reactors are pretty damn good, but you still got the waste, and there is a danger there. We're still figuring it out. Another technology we're still figuring out, it's way behind nuclear power, is desalination plants. And that's not to insult anyone's intelligence, but that takes seawater and makes it potable, at least potable. So, you could drink it. And I've had desalinized water before, and it doesn't taste the same. It almost tastes like distilled water, but it is drinkable. The big problem with desalination plants, as I understand it, and I don't know if you guys have looked into it more since we texted, but it just sucks a ton of power. I mean, it takes a lot of power to run a desalinization plant. That, and you got a ton of salt left over at the end. I don't know what form that's in. I don't know how dangerous it is, but you got those two things. So how about this? To combat the rising sea levels, coupled with the droughts in California, the Sea of that river flowing down to the Sea of Cortez, is drying up. You got the Salton Sea is, drying up and it's poisonous and all this stuff. How about we couple up nuclear reactors with desalination plants? We fight the rising seas, make a bunch of inland lakes, and just turn the entire U.S. into, this agricultural, powerhouse. We got too much water. We've got too much fresh water. I mean, has nobody thought of this before? I mean, if power is the issue, just couple it with a nuclear reactor. A nuclear reactor, a small one, dedicated to running that desalination plant. You build pipelines, all this stuff. I mean, am I missing something here? There's got to be. It seems like it makes sense.
It does. And here's the thing. I mean, it actually takes me to another topic I'll bring up after this, but you hit it on the head. One, you're talking about the energy. The biggest thing, and I was actually reading something else about the Colorado River. And I think the biggest challenge is what to do with all the salt. And again, I'm like you, I don't know what form that's in. I don't know why you can't use it on the roads or what the deal is or whatever, but big problem out here in the southwestern states in the Colorado River. So I didn't know that the Colorado River is a very salty freshwater, river compared to other freshwater rivers or what have you. And part of the problem is as the river water obviously dries up, the salt content or percent of salt goes up, and it's bad for crops. And there's studies on it where it's like they've got miles and miles of just like dry beds of just salt just being pushed because there's just nowhere for it to go. So I don't know what you do with the salt. And then you have all the brackish water, and you say, hey, what do you do with all the brackish water? And I don't know if you just take like the salt and just put it on one of Elon Musk's spaceships and just blast this thing out to the moon or out into space or whatever. But what's crazy is, and I haven't done enough research on the sea level rise from what I understand and what I've seen, there's obviously been some sea level rise over the last 500 years, 600 years, 700 years, whatever. And I haven't looked into it that deep. But what's funny is when you look at different subjects or topics surrounding this, you come up with different data. And so I went on to, when you brought up the desalination plant, which is genius. And a lot of those, I think California finally said they're going to fire one up. They've had one out there and they didn't want to fire it up because of the energy, yada, yada, yada. And I think they finally said they're going to fire it up because they have to. But then I was thinking about, when Josh said, well, sea levels aren't rising. And of course, NOAA and everybody else says it is. And then it takes me back to the old meme about Plymouth Rock. That Plymouth Rock has been in this spot since 1620, and it's still right there, at the water level. So then it immediately took me to a fact-checked article that said, well, Plymouth Rock has moved. They moved it in 1920 to its current location. Okay, so let's take that as fact. Plymouth Rock was moved because it was set on its base in 1920. So NOAA put out sea levels were expected to rise 10 to 12 inches in the next 30 years. Okay, then it says, which is the same amount of elevation or increased elevation since 1920. Now, these are two independent articles. So since 1920, sea levels have risen 10 to 12 inches because the fact check article about Plymouth Rock was, well, you can't use Plymouth Rock because it was moved since 1620. Okay, well, it was placed here in 1920, and you're telling me that since 1920, the sea levels have risen 10 to 12 inches and it still ain't underwater. It just doesn't make sense. And so that's the problem is when you read all this stuff and you try to, and these are all from like government websites and what have you. Again, we're not saying it isn't happening or whatever, but like the facts just don't match up. What's up, Luke?
Well, on that vein, I don't know enough about rising sea levels, just like you. Because I don't know enough about physics and the ocean and things like that. Because I do know, though, that the oceans are big. I do know that. They're freaking huge. So it's like, I remember my dad was telling me he took an engineering class at Texas Tech way back in the day. And one of their final problems was, you have an aircraft carrier, which this is going to transition nicely into my crazy fact that I just looked up. You have an aircraft carrier. The buoyancy is this and that, and it displaces this much water, so on and so forth. If a fly that weighs 0.0 whatever grams lands on the front whatever deck of the aircraft carrier, how much does that? I mean, what is the percentage that the water would be displaced or whatever it is? So I'm going to apply that to oceans, right? It's like, so if you put one drop into the middle of the Pacific Ocean, does that raise the sea levels? You know what I'm saying? Or a bucket of water or a swimming pool full with water. Will that affect the sea level? And how long will it take on, the Atlantic seaboard? I don't know. I don't know how that works. But yeah, it's a complex thing. But the Plymouth Rock thing since 1920, it's like, come on, man. You're asking me to suspend disbelief here. But I have a feeling we'll stay on this for a little while. But I'll go back to the desalination plants, right? You guys probably already knew this, but I did not know that each aircraft carrier has a desalination capability. Every aircraft carrier has one.
Yep.
They have destroyers have them too. Destroyers can produce 12,000 gallons of fresh water per day.
Actually, don't cruise lines have them? Didn't one of you guys say cruise ships had them? Something like that?
They have to, because aircraft carriers, those desalination plants, which makes sense, right? Because they have a nuclear reactor that can power that thing. A lot of kilowatt hours. They produce 200,000 gallons of potable water per day. That is insane. I mean, so it's like, well, it can't be that big of a problem. And probably the way the aircraft carriers do it, if they have the salt, right? Just jump back in the ocean. It's not polluted. We're putting back in what we took out. I mean, that's probably the reasoning behind it. It's not really pollution. So I did not know that. Josh, you said you are not done on climate change, and I'm not either, brother.
I didn't know why your crazy fact. I didn't know what you were going to throw at us, man. Honestly, I was a little scared there for a second. What you were going to come at us with when you pantomimed and everything. I was like, oh, Luke just discovered something wild, like like Russia just knew Kyiv or something. Kyiv. So I did not know. I knew that aircraft carriers had desalination capability. I did not know that destroyers had it, and I don't know, to Roger's point, I don't know if cruise ships have it or not. Here you guys can check that while I'm talking. The whole one need look no further. Just take the Plymouth Rock thing out of it, right? When you take a look at the Democrat elites who own so cruise ships they do have a desalination capability. Thanks, Luke. When you look at the leftist elites who are out there pushing for you to give your money to the United States government so they can change the temperature of the earth, right? The same people who couldn't beat the Taliban, the same people who took 20 years to replace the Taliban with the Taliban, right? The same government that can't get votes counted in an election in one day. If you would just give them more money, they will change the temperature of the earth. Right. They will change the climate of the earth. Just trust them. Trust them on this. The same government that, the same FBI that they demand that you trust, the same one that, surveilled Aretha Franklin for decades, the same one that surveilled Martin Luther King Jr. for decades, the same one that falsified FISA warrants, to infringe on American citizens' constitutional rights. If you will just trust them and give them more of your money, they can fix this. Just trust them. You morons. The ones that are out there being the loudest are the same ones who are purchasing beachfront property. The Obamas purchased an $11 million estate on the beach in Martha's Vineyard. The same people who said that, these places are going to be underwater in 20 years. They just purchased $1 million worth of property. Al Gore owns waterfront property. And he bought that after he invented climate change. Right. Al Gore didn't invent the internet, but he did invent climate change, or global warming, rather. You take a look at it. John Kerry is another one. The same guy who flies his private jet that puts tens of thousands of pounds of carbon into the atmosphere, more than some entire United States cities do in a year. He does it in a day. The same guy is the one telling you just give them more money and give them more control, because that's what it's about. It's about control. Now, let's just take the whole, like, whether you believe in climate change, whether you believe in global, let's take all that off, or just go ahead and wipe Plymouth Rock and their property, beachfront properties off the table. Okay. So let's say that the climate is changing, right? And maybe it is. Let's say that, okay, in 100 years, in 200 years, pick your timeline, that the state of Florida, what we know now is the state of Florida, will be underwater. Okay. At a certain point in time, all of the continents were one, right? Everybody learned about Pangea. At a certain point in this, planet's history, there was a landmass that connected Russia to Alaska, and Sarah Palin really could see Russia from her house. It was called the Bering Strait, the Bering Land Bridge, and people came over on it. Did all the indigenous folks who were, living on that piece of land, that piece of dirt, that terra firma, did they go, "Oh my God, we're drowning"? No. They picked their shit up and they moved. They moved. Right? And so maybe the earth has decided, guess what? You built New Orleans in a bowl, and I'm done with that. I'm done with your silly ideas of building cities in bowls on, the front of the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that back. Giving the government money and giving them control is not going to stop that. They cannot stop that. And maybe people do have to migrate like our ancestors did. Maybe people do have to move with the food, right? The Native Americans did it. Indians did it all the time, right? Buffalo herds moved. The food moved. The climate changed, right? Seasons. Hey, we're going to our winter, grounds. We're going to our summer grounds. Why is that? How arrogant do we have to be as a people to think that we can control the earth and we can control the atmosphere and we can control space? Like, how arrogant are we to think that? It's just it's mind-boggling to me, and it's mind-boggling to these people out here who are throwing, cans of soup on priceless paintings and then gluing themselves to the wall because of, quote unquote petroleum. You know how much petroleum was in that damn soup label can that you just toss up on the wall? Do you know how much petroleum is in your shoes? You know what the soles of your shoes are made out of? It's not just rubber straight from a rubber tree. You're not the Viet Cong. Who do you think you are? There's petroleum in that. There's petroleum in so many things that we use. Everything that we use during the day. If you were to go in and you were just to remove, it was like I was listening to a nutritionist guy that was on Jocko Willinik's podcast, and he's a nutritionist doctor, and he was like, if you remove everything that's processed from your pantry, from your cabinets, he was like, what would you have left? And I was like, oh man, that's a good example to use. Take everything that has any level of petroleum in it out of your house. You know what you're going to be left with? You're not going to be left with carpet because there's petroleum in it, right? Everything that's plastic, toss it out because it's got petroleum in it. So many things that we use has petroleum in it, and people are like, oh, well, we'll just get rid of the fuels and, electric cars are going to fix everything. Those people are idiots. And they don't understand. They're useful idiots for those folks on the left. All right, I'm starting to get pissed off. I'm gonna kick it over to Roger.
Well, no, it's if you haven't read Unsettled by Stephen Koonin, he was a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he talks a lot about the same thing. Because one, as we've mentioned, we're not talking about whether climate change happens or not. It obviously does. We're talking about man-made climate change. But to Josh's point, with just regular climate change, he addresses this in the book that, hey, guess what? We migrate, we move, and it doesn't happen in a year. It's not like we take the entire city of Miami and they say, hey, we got to move to Topeka. It doesn't happen that way. Over the course of thousands of years, farmland will change. People will migrate, right? You're going to migrate to the livable areas. That's what we've done. When you look at just mankind from the beginning, that's what we do. We move, and we move to more habitable areas. And that will happen over eons and thousands of years. So I think a lot of people forget that. Great book, by the way, if you haven't read Unsettled by Stephen Koonin. And you know what? I mean, the guy seems like he's got a lot of credentials, and he kind of brings up some outside of the climate change piece. He brought up what Luke brought up several times with, hey, there were several different models, and our measurements and the accuracy of our measurements going back like 100 years ago was so crude and so rudimentary that, hey, if you're off by a smidgen, right? I'll use Obama's, one smidgen. What impact does that have over the course of 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years? I mean, hell, and I get it. The weather and climate's supposed to be over 3 decades, but I mean, you can't get an accurate weather report for this weekend, much less look over the course of 1,000 years or 2,000 years or 3,000 years. And then when you look at man-made climate change, I don't know if we have an impact or how great of an impact. I mean, I would think that we have some impact, but going back to Luke's, analogy with the Pacific Ocean displacement, I mean, we already talked about CO2 in the atmosphere. It's 0.04%, right? I don't know. Do we make that much of a difference, Luke? Maybe we do. I don't know, but at 0.04%, the numbers just don't add up.
They don't. And I got some views on this. I mean, I believe that, take spirituality and God out of the equation, because most people you're going to argue with aren't going to believe in that anyway on this. But I personally believe I consider myself a conservationist to a point. I'm not an environmentalist, but again, I'm looking out for my fellow person too. When I'm driving down a highway, I don't like to see trash on the highway. I don't like to see it. It looks trashy, so to speak. So therefore, do unto others and all that. I don't throw trash out my window. I abide by the hunting laws, for instance. I mean, most state level parks and wildlife do a pretty good job at conservation. You don't shoot the deer this year because they got a population problem. This year there is no limit because the deer are getting overpopulated. They're going to die of disease or starvation. Feral hogs in Texas, no limit year-round season because they're just out of control. So it's not like I hate the environment or anything, but what I'm getting to is I believe that human beings are part of nature and part of this giant organism that is the planet Earth. I think that we tend to, the arrogance. One of you said the arrogance. It was Josh. The arrogance of human beings. We're naturally arrogant. We naturally think, well, we're not really part of this entire ecosystem. We're above it. We're not. We're part of it. That's all there is to it. And burning fossil fuels is the same, in my opinion. We're part of this planet. Our minds are of the planet. We evolved in a certain way. Us burning fossil fuels is tantamount to termites building a giant mound and just decimating their entire area around them until they've decimated everything. Any kind of wood they could eat to build their nest with and feed their colony is all dried up. So they're gonna do one of two things. They're either gonna move out of there, but a lot of times these colonies just die off because it's part of nature. You exhausted your resources and you could not make it. I believe humans are the same way. I do think, though, that human superpower is adaptability. The international airport in the Netherlands is like 70 feet below sea level. They built a system of levees and dikes, and they have reclaimed like 33% of their current country. So we're really good at adaptability, and right now we happen to have fossil fuels. That's what we use. If you step back and look at fossil fuels, it really isn't that efficient. There's stuff that could be far more efficient than fossil fuels if we could just nail down the technology aspect of it, shrinking down a nuclear reactor to the size of an engine, a car engine. The technology isn't there yet. The reason we use fossil fuels is because there's plenty of it. There's no real reason to use anything else. But mark my words, it won't be in our lifetimes. It'll be 100, 200, 300, 400 years down the road. We're transitioning to something else that's more efficient. But by the same token, if we don't, and we are poisoning the atmosphere and making it unlivable, we're doing that to ourselves. Okay? It's just part of nature. And if we as a collective species can't figure that out, well, then we're just going to die off. But to think the absolute arrogance that we can kill this planet and kill all life forms on it, it's ridiculous. It's the same thing with nuclear weapons, right? Well, nothing gets me more pissed off than we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet 10 times over. That's stupid. That's not accurate at all. Yes, we have we have enough to do a whole lot of damage and to kill, the majority of humans, but we're not going to destroy the planet. Anyway, I don't know. This is one of those things that, again, I believe we could talk about this for an entire episode,
Yeah. Yeah. Last point, we'll kick it over to Roger. But, what was it? It was last year. There was a glacier that was receding in Norway. And under that glacier, they found an old village that they dated back to the days of the Vikings. And every everybody on the left, the only thing that they pointed to was like, well, that glacier, it's melting, and that proves that global warming is true. And it was like what they failed to comprehend, or they refused to comprehend, was the fact that, hey, guy, for that village to have existed to begin with, guess what was not there? The effing glacier. Right? So one day they were like, that village was like, hey, man, we got to go because this glacier, this thing is moving toward us. This huge, massive ice of cold shit is moving toward us, at however many, millimeters per, decade. And, and so they packed up and they moved. Right. And eventually, okay, that glacier went away. And guess what? One day we won't see it. Our kids, great grandkids, great might see it. Guess what? There's probably going to be another glacier there at some point. And it's going to cover it back up. And it's going to cover up Boston. There's going to be one that covers Boston. It's like, how do you think the Great Lakes were made? Well, it's just, again, the arrogance of human beings to think that we can control the earth. It continually, it amazes me. It absolutely amazes me at times. And we're going to, like Luke said, we're going to get what we deserve, and it's either going to be good or it's going to be bad, but we're going to get it, either way. It's like that, what was that line in The Unforgiving? It's like,
we all
something
got
like,
it coming, kid.
Yep. We all got it coming, good or bad. So yeah, right. Sorry. All right. I'll shut up.
Well, and you got to remember, to close out on it, 135,000 years ago, there were hardly any glaciers on the planet. So, we obviously go through these changes, and final thought is just that there is no good or bad. I mean, just kind of is, right? I don't know. I think they call it like the anthropic principle or whatever it is, that, hey, just the conditions are set, and we exist in those conditions, and the earth will continue to move on, and it is risen. I don't know if Josh is right that those people moved from the glacier or from the village. Maybe they stayed in the village as the glacier was moving upon them and said, we're just not moving. And they're like frozen bodies down there, after, 1 millimeter every 1,000-year movement or whatever. Real quick to close, before we close out, kind of want to get y'all's last thoughts, because midterms are under 2 weeks now, right at 2 weeks, something like that. So what's kind of, and I'm on the RCP page right now, the Real Clear Politics. They actually have the GOP, their projections, picking up 3 Senate seats. So they believe that there's going to be a Republican-controlled Senate. They also believe there's going to be a Republican-controlled House, which I think that's going to happen. The House is a no-brainer. Kind of want to get y'all's last thoughts on, you've obviously got what's going on in Pennsylvania. I think that debate's coming. When's that Fetterman debate? The Fetterman.
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be coming up. Fetterman-Oz debate. I think that's here within the next week or so or whatever, even though they've already started some of the early voting out there. You've got, Bud looks like he's ahead in North Carolina. What's interesting about this is that a lot of these states, and I'll run down them real quick, a lot of these states, they have the Democrat candidate up by like a point. And it's what they're factoring into this. And this is the same thing with the Trafalgar group and a couple other polls. They're basically like, hey, if the Dem is not ahead by 3 or 4 points, then they're losing. And they base that off of the 2016 polls, and then you can go on from there from the 2020 polls, 2018, 2020, and then now. But with the Senate, so they have Pennsylvania, Fetterman plus 1.3, which if you go by their 3-4 point theory would be a loss. And I think he's lost a lot of ground anyway. I mean, for him, the deciding factor probably will be the debate. Right. So if he comes out, it's Tuesday. So I would, personally, I think that especially when you look at the trend, because Oz has just been going to town on the dude. If Fetterman actually shows up and has a strong debate, that could sway it, because I know that is on a lot of people's minds. If he flops, it could be bad. But I think Oz also has to have a strong showing as well. When you look at New Hampshire probably is going to stay blue. Hassan's up by 5.4. North Carolina's got Bud 3.7. That's going to stay that way. Nevada is going to be a red pickup. Lexalt has been ahead in the polls out there for quite a while now, I think for several weeks, all within margin of error. But the fact that you're even that close, Nevada's probably going to be a red pickup. Arizona will be interesting because Peter Thiel pulled his money from JD Vance because he think that's got, he's going to win that race, and he's thrown it behind Masters. And now we've seen this trend. I think Kelly's still up 2.5, but we've seen this big push towards Blake Masters. And I think, like we talked about before, Josh, you ask yourself, hey, do people split the ballot, this and that? I don't think they do, but I think you were saying something earlier this week that I think a lot of those folks just stay home. I think a lot of your Democrat voters just stay home. They just don't go. I don't think they're going to split the ballot, especially in a lot of these places. They're so extreme when you look at down ballot, from the governor's race down to your Senate candidates, down to your House of Representatives. I mean, they're polar opposites. So I don't know how anybody could split any of that stuff. But Georgia, they think that's going to go to a runoff. Warnock up by a point. Because I think in Georgia, what is it? You have to get 50% of the vote. If not, it goes to a runoff, something like that.
Yeah.
Ohio looks like Vance is going to win that. He's up by 3. Wisconsin, Johnson's up by 3. Colorado will stay blue. Washington will stay blue. Florida, Rubio is just mopping the floor up. And, I think Val Demings is a solid candidate for Florida. I mean, I'm not a big fan of her, but she's just in the wrong state. They need to move her. She needs to relocate. And then Blumenthal, that blubbering idiot, will be, he's up by 9. So any final thoughts going into this midterms? What's your call, Josh?
So I think, I know they're calling for, +3 in the Senate. I think that's I don't know. I think that's being generous. I'll be shocked if we pick up the Senate, honestly. I really will, and Pennsylvania is going to be really a big tail of the tape, on the Senate. I think the House is pretty much a lock. Knock on wood. I'll caveat it with never underestimate the it's like Obama said about Biden. Never underestimate the GOP's ability to f things up. At the last second. Luke brought up a great point. Earlier. Saying the GOP should just shut up. Just shut up and let it deal with itself, because even the New York Times put out some numbers, and even the New York Times and the Washington Post were like, man, the Democrats are really sucking, this midterm. And the top 3 things on everybody's mind is the economy, right? Inflation, crime, and schools, kids, right?
Hey, but Nancy Pelosi said the New York Times is an outlier poll. It's an outlier poll.
Right, yeah. The New York Times, the old great lady, the staunch conservative rag, is it's just an outlier. It's an outlier out there. It really, it teeter totters. What an absolute clown. So the Washington Post is saying with likely voters, they're saying 49% of likely voters are voting Republican, 45% going to Democrats. Majority of men, 50 to 45, are pulling the arm for Republicans. Women, they have it down as 47, 40. It's even and again, this is all likely voters. By age, the majority, 45 to 64, 59 to 38 are voting Republican. And what their numbers are showing. And again, this is from the New York Times. So basically us, our folks our age are voting Republican. And the only 2 age groups that are opposite, that are voting more Democrat than Republican, are the 18 to 29-year-olds and the 30 to 44s. So basically, your younger folks, who are stupid and haven't figured it out by now. But the The big one that the New York Times is like they're really getting hurt in is the vast majority of likely Hispanic voters are voting Republican. Vice Democrat, and I know Luke. Luke beats that drum a lot. For the Texas um, elections. The state and local level. A lot of the Hispanics are, they're again, a lot of Roman Catholics. They're conservative. They don't buy into the wokeness, and a lot of the ones that came here legally aren't super excited that people are getting to jump the line in front of them. And I think at the end of the day, and I really wanted to talk about this, and I guess we're going to have to shove it off for the next episode. And I want to get a shout out to Admiral Dave for pushing the article my way. But there was a Federalist article that came out, and basically it talked about how the traditional conservative movement is kind of dead, and we need to stop calling ourselves conservatives, and we need to start calling ourselves restorationists, because that's really where we're at. These individual right, these family values, we that we base ourselves on, right? We're for individual rights, family values, religious freedom, preserve traditions, civilizational achievements, and stuff like that. And the article speaks to it. It speaks to the technology revolution, really, the late 90s, early 2000s, when technology really came online, and you started having MySpace, which morphed, then you have Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, has really changed the ability for the left to get their word out, to peddle their snake oil, and the conservatives weren't prepared for that. They weren't prepared for, basically the takeover of public education. They weren't prepared for, all these other, really industries that the left has really, really owned. And I think that it speaks to why we saw the assault on police in 2020, was because that was one of the last things that the left didn't, just purely own, was the police departments, down at the local level. They've cornered the market in the media. They've cornered the market in education, from grade school all the way into the collegiate level. It was a great article. I'll try and post it on a blog, because I have we haven't posted a blog in a little while. We're kind of remiss on that. But it was a great article. We could talk about that, in the next episode or something, because it's again, I think it was really good, and it speaks to our time. And it really speaks to, you look at the GOP of the Lindsey Grahams and the Mitch McConnells versus the GOP of the Kerry Lakes, the JD Vances, and folks that are coming up, that younger, those younger folks, and folks who are a little less willing to compromise on some of these things that the GOP has compromised on, and put us at a disadvantage. I think so. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the midterms. I'll hand it over to Luke to see what he's got.
So restorationists, that's interesting, but I'll tell you what's going to happen with that. If the conservatives start rebranding themselves as restorationists, or any other word, it'll be branded by mainstream media and the left as something bad, like Christian nationalists. They're traditionalists. They're going to throw out the Handmaid's Tale a lot, and it will be, they'll try to brand it like a Tea Party meets extreme right wing Christian nationalist group. The playbook, yeah, okay. As Josh said, they already have because the playbook is set. The playbook's set. However, conservatives, that's a bad word now anyway. And if they try to rebrand, or if it just naturally happens, they'll make it into a worse word than conservative. This is conservative on steroids. Now, I do want to read that article, but I'm just saying what's going to happen. Look, man, the only way Florida goes blue is if the sea levels rise, like Josh said, just swallows up Florida. That's the only way Florida's going blue. That's it. this is what I think about the midterms. I kind of said it last week, and I'll echo it. I think there's a lot of energy, 2010-esque on the conservative side of the aisle, and the energy is just not there on the liberal side of the aisle. That said, what to look for? I mean, I think there are going to be some surprises in some of these races, but those surprises will tend toward Republicans. I don't think there will be any Democrat surprises in the midterms. If there are any surprises at all, it's going to come from the Republicans. The other thing to watch for is I'm gonna drop the F bomb. I want you to look for fuckery afoot. Okay, some strange things going on in some of these swing districts and these swing states. I don't think it'll be too bad, but I do think there will be a little bit of it. Dovetailing into that, I think all three of us agree what to watch for. I want you to watch this real close after the election and for the next 2 years, because we're saying it now, October 23rd, 2022, that DeSantis won because he suppressed the vote in Florida. And they're going to be like, DeSantis has a horrible voting rights record, and they are going to ride that boat, ride that train all the way into the 2024 election. I think that might not might that is going to happen. That will be the issue. DeSantis wants to suppress the vote. He's not about minorities voting. We need to expand voting rights. Voter ID shouldn't be a thing, so on and so forth. That will be a mainstream talking point for the next 2 years, specifically with DeSantis. No joke. So banned by YouTube. Yeah, this one might get banned by YouTube for sure. We talked about climate change a lot. We didn't talk about the COVID though, so maybe we're good. So a few shout outs. If you guys have any shout outs, you want me to kick it back to you to close out, just hit me in the chat there. But I want to shout out Carlton Zeus. We really want to get him on, and I talked to him last night for a while, and he had a harrowing experience in San Antonio over this weekend, and he saved someone's life, and it really meant a lot to him because he got to do something that in time to save someone that he didn't get to do earlier. And I don't want to get too much into it. I'd rather him do that, but shout out to him more than just the music he lets us use, but shout out to him for actually saving somebody's life. And that's not overstating it. He literally saved someone's life. Same as usual suspects, shout outs. I think, we forget a lot. It was Damon who tweeted at us. Thanks, Damon, for tweeting at us. And we didn't ignore you. We just like, that's a big question you asked there. So we addressed it a little bit in this episode. So thanks for that. Scott, Jesse, Diego, Jim, Ted, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We're real honored. And again, if this is your first time listening, appreciate it, man. Tell your friends. It's good stuff. So that's it. I mean, I don't see anybody doing any shout outs. I'm getting a thumbs up from Josh. I'm getting the look of judgment from Roger, and we'll close it out. So until next time, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured. Tulsi 2024.